Okay, real quick, before we do anything else, hold my scroll. Because what I'm about to tell you is going to make you look at every single word you've ever said in English and go, wait, what? Here's a question. Why do we call the animal a cow, but the food on our plate beef? Why is it a pig in the field, but pork at dinner? Why do we have a house, but live in a mansion if we're fancy? Why does English have like 4 words for everything? The answer is one battle, one invasion, and one very ambitious guy from Normandy who decided that England looked really nice and he wanted it. This is the story of 1066, the Norman Conquest, and how a single war literally rewired the English language from the inside out. Alright, let's set the scene. It's the year 1066. England is speaking Old English, also called Anglo-Saxon. It sounds basically nothing like what you're hearing right now. We are talking guttural, Germanic, almost Scandinavian language. If you went back in time and tried to have a conversation, you'd be completely lost. The King of England at this point is Harold Godwinson. He just fought off a Viking invasion in the north. Literally, just got done with that. And he's exhausted. His army is tired. They've marched hundreds of miles after all. And then he gets the news. William, the Duke of Normandy, has landed on the south coast of England with an army. And he's not there for a vacation. No sirree. William of Normandy, later known as William the Conqueror obviously, had a pretty solid claim to the English throne, or at least he thought he did. The previous king, Edward the Confessor, may have promised it to him. Harold Godwinson also claimed Edward promised it to him. And there was a third guy, Harold Hardrada of Norway, I think that's how you say that name, who also wanted it. Surprise, surprise. So basically everybody wanted England and nobody was going to sort it out with a polite conversation. So Harold rushes his exhausted army south, and on October 14th, 1066, at the Battle of Hastings, everything changes. The battle is brutal. It lasts all day, and Harold, according to the famous story, takes an arrow to the eye. Whether that's literally true is debated by historians, but what's not debated is the outcome. Harold is dead. His army collapses, and William the Conqueror marches to London. On Christmas Day, 1066, William is crowned King of England in Westminster Abbey, and that's where our language story really begins. Alright, before we continue into this video any further, I just want to share this program that I started recently, and it really helped me relax and focus while I was working. I'll leave the link in the description as well as the pinned comment, and you can check it out. Let's get back to the video. Now, here's the thing you have to understand. William didn't just replace the king, he replaced basically the entire ruling class. The Anglo-Saxon nobles, the earls, the lords, the landowners, they either died at Hastings, got their land confiscated, or were pushed completely out of power. William handed out English land to his Norman French knights and barons like it was a loyalty rewards program. So, overnight, England has a French-speaking elite running the show. The king, French, the nobles, French, the church leadership, French, the courts, the government, the law, all conducted in sacre bleu, French. All conducted in French is what I should have said. Anyways, let's move it on. And the common people still speaking Old English, going about their lives, farming, trading, just trying not to get taxed into oblivion by their new French overlords. Man, all of a sudden I want some French fries. This creates the most chaotic linguistic situation you can imagine. Two languages living in the same country, attached to completely different social classes. For about 300 years after the year 1066, England is essentially bilingual, but not in a cute human learns both languages way. It's split by class. If you're a peasant, you speak English. If you're a nobility, you speak Français. If you're writing official documents or laws, and then that's Latin. So the language you spoke literally told everyone your social status the second you opened your mouth. Your accent wasn't just an accent, it was your whole identity. And this is where the cow and beef thing comes from. The Anglo-Saxon farmers, the common people, they raised the animals. They called them by their Old English names. Cow, pig, sheep, chicken, those are all Old English words, Germanic roots. But when the food got to the table, fancy Norman table, the French-speaking nobles had their own words for it. Beef, from the French word boeuf, pork from porc, and mutton from mouton, and poultry from poulet. I probably butchered that worse than the butcher who's doing all the butchering for those meals. Wow, that was a mouthful. So the animal in the field has an English name. The dish on the plate has a French name because the English people never got to eat it. They just raised it and butchered it, like I just did with the French language. Anyways, that's not a fun linguistic quirk. That's a power structure baked into the dictionary. Okay, but wait. English clearly survived. We're not speaking French right now, so what happened? This is where it gets really interesting. For about 300 years, that's 3 centuries, French is the prestige language of England. But languages are living things, and living things don't stay still, you know? The Norman nobles over generations start to intermarry with English speakers, trades happen, people talk to each other, kids grow up bilingual, and slowly and inevitably the two languages start bleeding into each other. Then a few things happen in the 1300s that accelerates everything. First, the Black Death. Ooh, let's talk about the lovely Black Death. The plague that killed roughly a third of Europe hits England hard in 1348. It wipes out huge portions of the population, including a lot of the educated Latin-writing clergy. The labor shortage that follows actually gives common English speakers more economic power than they've had in centuries. Their language starts getting more respect. The second thing that happens, England goes to war with France. Surprise, surprise. They do this again and again and again during this time period. And when you're at war with France, speaking French starts to feel like a little awkward. English nationalism rises. English identity becomes something to be proud of. By 1362, nearly 300 years after the Norman Conquest, Parliament officially passes the Statute of Pleading, requiring that all legal cases be conducted in English rather than French. That's the moment the government basically admitted, yeah, English is the real language here. And in 1399, King Henry IV became the first English king since 1066 to give his coronation speech in English. 300 years later. That's how long it took. That's ridiculous, to be honest. A country that's called England, the people of it are called English. The ruling class did not speak English for nearly 3 centuries. But here's the thing, and this is the key. The English that came out the other side wasn't Old English anymore. It had absorbed thousands of French words. French grammar had softened its edges. Latin had crept in through the church. What emerged was something new. Middle English, the language of Chaucer or Chaucer, oui, oui, mon ami. Anyways, what am I saying? The beginning of the road towards what you're speaking right now. So let's talk numbers for a second, because they're wild. Modern English has one of the largest vocabulary of any language in the world, somewhere between 170,000 and 1,000,000 words depending on how you count. And roughly 30% of English words come directly from French. Another 30% or so come from Latin, much of it flowing through French, Germanic, Old English, about 25 to 30%. So the language you think of as English is mathematically more French and Latin than it is Old English. But here's the twist. The most common everyday words, the ones you use constantly without thinking, those are almost all Old English. Germanic. The, and, is, love, friend, earth, water, mother, father, child, death. No, I didn't just lose my bloody mind. I'm telling you the words that remained. The heavy, emotional, fundamental human words. Those survived from the Anglo-Saxon roots. The Norman French gave us a vocabulary for power, law, culture, cuisine, fashion, and sophistication. So English basically ended up with two personalities layered on top of each other. The raw, emotional gut of it Germanic, the fancy educated surface of it being French and Latin. This is literally why English has so many synonyms that feel slightly different in tone. Ask is Old English, inquire is French Latin, help is Old English, assist is French, kingly is Old English, royal is French, regal is Latin. Same concept, 3 words, and each one carries a slightly different vibe. One feels casual, one feels formal, one feels official. That's not an accident, that's 1066 still echoing in our vocabulary right this moment. When writers want to sound warm and direct, they instinctively reach for the Germanic words. When they want to sound authoritative or sophisticated, they reach for the French and Latin ones. Good writers actually do this on purpose. You've been feeling the Norman conquest in literature your entire life without knowing it. Here's the full picture. One battle, one October day in 1066, one arrow, maybe at Hastings, and the entire trajectory of the English language shifts permanently. The Anglo-Saxons lose their ruling class, the Normans bring their French. For 300 years, 2 languages coexist, argue, blend, and fight over a country. The Black Death reshuffles the deck. War with France makes English cool again, and out the other side emerges this remarkable hybrid monster of a language, one that has more words than almost anyone knows what to do with, borrows shamelessly from everyone, and somehow becomes the closest thing the modern world has to a global tongue. And it all traces back to a duke from Normandy who thought he had a claim to a throne and was willing to sail across the channel to prove it. You could argue, and linguistics sort of do, that without the Norman conquest, English as we know it simply does not exist. The world's dominant language in 2025 might have been something that sounds a lot more like Old Norse, or maybe German. We genuinely don't know. What we do know is that William the Conqueror didn't just take a crown. He accidentally co-authored the English dictionary. Hold my scroll, indeed. If you made it this far, you already know this channel is built for exactly this kind of story, the wild, the forgotten, that sounds completely made up but absolutely happened, corners of history. We cover it all, and we draw very questionable illustrate. If you want more of that, smash that subscribe button. It's free and it genuinely helps me more than you think. Drop a comment below with your favorite English word that comes from French. Bonus points if it's a food one. Oh man, I'm hungry. I want to see beef, mutton, and poultry in the comments immediately. Until next time, history has got a lot more where that came from. Hold my scroll and gently stroke it too. Before I go though, just a reminder, that program that I spoke of, it really did help me focus while working and especially relax after I'm done working. It's an audio program that you can listen to while working or working out or just staring at the wall. So it's pretty convenient. Like I said, link in the description, also in the pinned comment below. That's how you can support me without any extra cost to you. Thank you so much for watching this video.